Chapter 8. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. And they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountain of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels which are yet to sound. Because the vast majority of you will have no idea of what was happening in the temples, in the temple that the Jews had in Jerusalem, you will not really get much of an understanding of the first 3 verses here. So I'm going to try and explain some of the symbolism. He opens up the 7th seal, which is the beginning of the 7th time. Now there's a lot of parallels between chapter 18 and chapter 16 in this book, and a lot of the some of the material that's here sort of actually goes back to the Old Testament, Ezekiel chapter 10, if I remember correctly. Anyway, the angels stood before God, and they are given 7 trumpets, but they don't sound them yet. This is a description of an incense burning ceremony which took place regularly in the tabernacle and in the temple when it was born, when it was raised. And on every other day of the year except one day, the priest would take a silver censer and he would burn incense in the silver censer. But on the day of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the day when the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies to make recompense for the sins of the nation, he would take a golden censer. And they would take fire from the golden altar, and they would put it with incense, and they would burn incense in symbolic gesture of the prayers of the people. So that at the incense, the smoke from the burning of the incense was a symbol of the prayers of the people. And so here what is happening is, for a short space of time, the incense is being burned as a symbol of the prayers of the saints who have been treated badly, persecuted, killed, all kinds of things done to them by the people on the earth who hate the saints who are righteous. And this process is taking place, and there's absolute silence while that incense is being burned and the prayers are symbolically being said. And then the angel took the censer, more fire from the altar, cast it to the earth, and there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. In other words, there were things happening in the earth. The prayers had been heard. God's wrath at the powers of the earth that have dealt so treacherously, so miserably, so meanly, so murderously with the members of his church are harsh because that is the way they have dealt with his people. And then the 7 angels prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and these are a listing of the judgments that come upon the wicked, not the righteous, the wicked. Now, as there will be some effect upon the righteous, but it will not be the full effect. So we have the first angel sounded, there's hail and fire mingled with blood. The second angel, great mountain burning with fire. Third part of the sea became as blood. Third part of the creatures destroyed. The third angel sounded, there was a great star from heaven, Satan, burning as it were not a lamp but a torch. And he fell upon the third part of the rivers and the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called wormwood. Now wormwood translates off as bitterness. Sin is always bitterness. And the third part of the waters became bitterness. And many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. The men and the waters were made bitter. If you're engaged in sin, you will always be bitter. Eventually, bitterness is one of the prices you will pay for sin. The fourth angel sounded, the sun is smitten, the third part of the moon, third part of the stars. Angel flying in the midst of heaven, verse 13, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants, the unrighteous inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet that are yet to sound. There are horrible things that are going to happen to the unrighteous. And this is because they have hated the saints, they have persecuted the saints, they have done everything they could to kill the saints and make their lives absolutely unendurable. And God will not tolerate that when it comes time for judgment. They will find out, those who have been that way to the Lord's people will find out that they have somebody big who's going to come and say, you shouldn't have done that.